Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. All right, today we got some more 2A news for you. Again, this is another article that comes out from our friends at Ammo Land. Mr. John Crump wrote this particular article, and I wanted to share it with you. It is entitled, SCOTUS Declines to Hear Two Bumpstock Cases. Interesting. So we see in the courts that Bumpstocks are making a splash. Maybe not quite so in the way that we want it to go, but we're going to break into this, and John Crump lays it out beautifully here. Before we get started, I would like to thank our friends at Arkin Optics for supporting our content. They are an amazing group of people, very patriotic folks. Their optics are rugged, super tough. We've torture tested the ever-loving crap out of them. They've held up really great. They have an excellent warranty, and I just cannot say enough great things about these optics for the price. They're an excellent value. If you're looking for a long-range precision type optic that won't break the bank, definitely check out Arkin. They've got some amazing stuff, and they're engineered and put together by people who have real experience in the field as snipers. So, great group of people. Check them out, Arkin Optics, and tell them we sent you, and a big thanks to them for supporting our efforts. It means a lot to us. The United States Supreme Court declined to hear two Bumpstock cases, meaning Bumpstocks will remain illegal for the foreseeable future. After the 2017 Las Vegas shooting, President Donald Trump ordered the ATF to investigate the legality of Bumpstocks. The president was spurred on by an initial report from the FBI that the killer had several firearms equipped with Bumpstocks. Overnight, Bumpstocks became enemy number one of the anti-gun crowds and the media. A Bumpstock is a device that replaces the stock and pistol grip. When the shooter puts forward pressure on the handguard, it causes the shooter to pull the trigger. The shooter keeps pressure on the handguard, causing the firearm's recoil to reset the trigger. This technique is called bump firing. It is possible to bump fire using a belt loop or a rubber band. A Bumpstock just makes bump firing easier. Anti-gun advocates claimed the device was a machine gun. Before the shooting, the ATF long held that Bumpstocks did not meet the definition of a machine gun because the shooter's finger pulled the trigger once for each bullet expelled. Although the device sped up the rate of fire, the device did not convert the firearm from semi-automatic to full auto. After Trump's demand, the ATF used Chevron deference to reverse the ATF's previous decision and declared the device a machine gun. Chevron deference says, when a regulation is unclear, the agency responsible for the rule can use its deference to decide what it means. Before Bumpstock, Chevron deference was only used for administrative regulations. The ATF has now started using its deference for criminal statutes. After the new regulation was enacted, GOA sued the Department of Justice over the new rule in the Sixth Circuit in GOA versus Garland. The gun rights group would lose in district court but would win in front of a panel of 3 judges in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. The federal government asked and received an en banc hearing. An en banc hearing means that the full bench of judges hears the case. The Sixth Circuit split in an 8-8 decision. Since the court ruled for neither side, the lower court's decision stands. GOA expressed disappointment in the Supreme Court's decision not to grant a right of certiorari. I can never say that word correctly. I apologize. Advocates hope that the court would start taking on more gun cases. SCOTUS had a history of rejecting Second Amendment cases until it agreed to hear Bruin. The implications of redefining a Bumpstock, redefining a firearm accessory, and calling it a machine gun because it was capable of bump fire sets a horrible precedent, said Aidan Johnston, Director of Federal Affairs for Gun Owners of America. We are not going to stop defending our members' rights because of one setback or one court that refuses to get involved. The New Civil Liberties Alliance also sued in the 10th Circuit over the ATF's abuse of Chevron deference in Aposhian versus Garland. The plaintiff's injunctions were denied in district court. NCLA appealed the decision to a panel of judges in the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. The panel upheld the district court's decision. NCLA then filed for and received an en banc hearing. The 10th Circuit also agreed with the district court's ruling. The final case that can affect Bumpstocks is Cargill versus Garland. That case is currently sitting with the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals. The plaintiffs lost a panel decision but were granted an en banc hearing. No matter what side wins, the losing side is expected to petition SCOTUS for certiorari, I cannot say that word, save my life, I'm sorry, in this case. With the Supreme Court's decision, Bumpstocks will remain illegal, and it might be some time before SCOTUS hears a case that will reverse the ATF's use of Chevron deference. So we've said in many other videos that, you know, these abuses of administrative power that are given to them, I believe that they're using the Chevron deference rulemaking, you know, method or you know, using that particular type of strategy in a way that's not really consistent with the way it was originally intended to be used. I mean, especially when you're talking something that is enforced by lethal force. I don't think it was ever intended to be used in that manner, okay? Now, a regulatory thing like, okay, we're going to issue a fine, like it was originally like an EPA issue that was brought up under where, okay, well, if a company does XYZ, we're going to send them a fine related to an EPA violation or something. Well, a fine is one thing. Not that I agree with fines. I think it's terrible that businesses get fined into oblivion because it keeps the little guy from starting a business too. The more regulations are in place, the harder it is for Joe Blow to get in there and compete. It's almost like they kind of want it that way, isn't it? But I digress. The point is, though, is that I don't think this rulemaking was ever intended to be done in a way where it involves life and death. I mean, and let's just say, the ATF doesn't come and knock politely. They don't send you a letter and say, hey, by the way, we think you're doing this. Or they don't, call you and say, hey, by the way, you're doing this. No, they show up with a van full of people with MP5s, or at least that's a perception, right? The ATF has a history of, certainly doing some nasty things to people they don't like. So in light of a situation that can be enforced using lethal force up to and including your death, depending on how things go, I just think that that's a real major hang up on this Chevron deference that the courts are eventually going to have to admit, hey, this isn't right. And it's also, depriving you of your ability to have even representation at all. What's the point of even electing people to Congress? What's the point of electing senators? What's the point of electing a president if they don't go to Capitol Hill and fight for your rights in whatever way you elected them to do, right? Okay, if the will of the people was to ban bump stocks, well, then why didn't Congress pass a law to ban bump stocks? It's because the political will wasn't there, right? We know this. And I think there's also a little bit more of a far-reaching thing. I'm not going to get into all the legal craziness because I'm not a lawyer, guys. Look, I'm just a dude with an opinion, all right? So take it with a grain of salt. But it seems to me that maybe it's the fact that the Supreme Court sees the gun issue as maybe not quite a low-hanging enough fruit. There's a lot of other instances where these alphabet agencies are abusing Chevron deference. So with something that is politically driven as firearms, right, whether or not they want to admit it, they may not want to hear it just because it's related to guns, but that doesn't mean that through some other way that they won't remove the rulemaking ability from the ATF by proxy of affecting a different piece of area in the law that's being challenged, whether it's the EPA or some other administrative alphabet agency that uses the rulemaking process in the same way, but to different means and different ends and affecting different people or affecting different rights. All right, that very well could be the case. You might see where they go, well, we're not going to hear the 2A connected version, but we may grab this other low-hanging fruit, which will then trickle down to this. So the fact that they're refusing to hear these bump stock cases, does it mean that that means that they're implying that they think that bump stocks are machine guns and that they agree with what the ATF said? I don't think that's the case at all. Many would view this as a loss, right? Like this isn't a victory. This is something that is a setback. Maybe a setback in the time it's going to take to resolve it, but I don't think it's going to be a setback in the instance of the end result being what it is. And that is the abuse of Chevron deference. That's really what this comes down to. This isn't really about bump stocks. The ATF could just as easily have said, well, that fancy Geisley trigger that you have in your AR makes you so fast that it sounds like a machine gun when you shoot it because your trigger finger is so fast. Well, it must be a machine gun. That's not true. That does not change the definition of a machine gun. And by proxy, it doesn't change the definition of what the law is. If they want to change the definition of a machine gun, they have to change the Gun Control Act. They have to change the law. That has to go through Congress. They don't get to just say, well, for all this time it was okay, and now because reasons, we want it to not be so. And I think we're going to see the same situation with pistol braces. You know, we're going to see the same situation with bump stocks. And once we remove that kind of crooked rulemaking loophole that they're using and essentially strip them of their power to do these things, I think we'll see some movement on the situation. I think that will affect bump stocks, braces, magazine bans, magazine restrictions, hell, even assault weapons bans as they're written. You know, it very well could trickle down in that way. Bruin changes things because it really does force us to apply a much more traditional standard on what the Second Amendment was when it was passed, what restrictions were in place, what historical, precedence was set, and when. New York, this is a different conversation, but New York's trying to argue, well, we've had we've had really strict process for getting a carry permit in New York for over 100 years. One could argue that, but here's the thing. Just because you've been infringing on people's rights for 100 years doesn't mean it's okay to keep doing it either, right? And I think that the courts are seeing through their bullcrap. They're seeing that what it was always intended to be was a way to disenfranchise minorities, to disenfranchise poorer people, people who aren't as well connected and don't know the right people to talk to, or that can't pay the ransom to get the permit. I mean, or for them to just have the ability to go, well, you know what, you're not someone we like. You don't fit the moral character of what we decide the proper moral character is. Therefore, we're just going to say you can't have a permit here. And that's the kind of stuff we're fighting. Now, that's a different conversation, but I wanted to share this information about the bump stocks because I think some folks are reading into it properly in terms of what the connotations of them denying to hear these cases immediately could be. But I think that there is a long-term win. They're setting us up for a long-term win. And I think that they know they're going to hear a case related to Chevron deference that's not 2A related, and they're going to use that as a springboard, as a gotcha moment. That way, there's not the political connotation of going, oh, well, they voted yay towards something that is a controversial thing like the Second Amendment, which I don't know why it would be controversial. It's the most clearly written and clearly worded amendment in the entire document. It says exactly what it means. I don't know what's so controversial about it, but in their minds, maybe they see it as being easier to get the entire panel of judges on the Supreme Court to go yay to, shoot down Chevron deference related to something First Amendment or whatever, any other type of situation, anything but the Second Amendment. And I think that that's probably the route they're going, and I think it's intentional. And I'm just going to leave it there. So, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for supporting our efforts. Make sure you click the notification bell, subscribe so you're getting all of our videos. And a big thank you again to Arkin for supporting our efforts. Go check them out. Really great people. I really appreciate y'all watching the videos. We've got a lot going on. I know that we've, been talking about more news and more political stuff. We do have a ton of gun videos on the way, guys. I promise. We're just in between filming. So understand, we've got a ton of awesome stuff we're going to be showing you. So I'm looking forward to putting out more gun content. We've also got some awesome reloading and gunsmithing content coming up that you guys are going to love. So make sure you stay in tune for all that. Yes, we have more meltdowns on the way. I'm just waiting on a few things to pan out, but we will be shooting more meltdowns. Don't worry. We're still a multifaceted channel with a ton of different things going on. And I have a lot of exciting news to share with you guys, but I'm just not ready to let the cat out of the bag just yet. But in the meantime, enjoy the content. Thank you so much for watching. Many more videos on the way. We'll see you soon.